I think you're going to be shocked at some of the gains you're going to get.
I'm still dealing with a little elbow flare up.
Shut your mouths.
But it's not. And
If he's,
it worked. It worked. It's just like, he's silent. He's silent. He can't say anything. Welcome back to Past Your Prime, the podcast for active adults who are currently fighting for their lives in gym parking lots because it's the first, second, third, fourth week of January. I'm Alex Kiker, pro volleyball player, working dad, and a guy whose current New Year's resolution is simply to get through a warm-up without making a sound that resembles a bag of dry pasta breaking. My knees do crunch every time I get up off the ground. I'm joined by my co-host Craig Smith, physical therapist, strength coach, life professional, and a man who spends the month of January watching people lift and wondering if he should just start handing out his business card at the front door, which is what you've been doing this past weekend. I saw you.
I was just doing that, yeah.
Today we're talking about exercise resolution traps. I think a lot of people are now hopefully in their second week of their New Year's resolution challenge goal habit stacking, and are probably getting injured. They've also probably been scrolling on Instagram and seeing, don't do this exercise or do this exercise. And so our thought was just to kind of go through a couple of those exercises, maybe talk about the risk versus reward.
Yeah.
I think most of them have rewards, but exercise can also be risky.
Which is inherent in the activity. Yeah, absolutely. You get pinned under a bar, that's a risk.
Yeah. You try to do a box jump onto a wooden box that's way too high for you. Bye-bye, shins.
Yeah.
You didn't need them anyway.
We call those skin puddles.
Skin.
I've treated a skin puddle, somebody who got an infection after doing that. Scraping it on there, just oof, right in the bone.
Scrape.
Oof.
Love to scrape my shins. Yeah, I posted a video a couple of weeks ago of me doing a box jump, and one of my friends commented, do you ever face plant into the wall in front of you?
No.
And luckily, no, because you just fall straight down.
Yeah. You just hit your stomach, swack, like the face. Yeah. Who hasn't, though? I mean, I've definitely gone into a wall before.
Yeah. No, when I first started doing the over 50-inch box jumps a couple of months ago, I failed a lot of times before I first got it, but they're getting easier again.
Was the failure related to the approach and you just kind of bailed out? Or was it you tried to get up there, feet don't hit?
Yeah, my feet didn't
Knees get on there.
hit the front, and then I just would slide down.
Okay.
Yeah.
The increase in height, is it mostly happening because you're tucking more? Or is it you're getting higher?
It's probably a little bit of both. I think I'm getting a little bit higher.
Okay.
But I'm also getting a little bit more hip mobility to be able to tuck and get those legs up there.
So you're tucking more. Got it.
I'd say it's both.
It's athletic, though.
I'm jumping higher.
I do appreciate that. No, I like it. I like it. This topic is actually fascinating to me. It is interesting how people will label exercises bad. I've absolutely done it, but typically it's very specific to something the person's dealing with. But I do find it interesting how many people want to label an activity or exercise they're not doing as bad. It's kind of fun.
And that's always how it is, right? Like, I don't do XYZ exercise.
Yeah.
Like, those are bad for you.
It's really fascinating. My experience around so many different communities of exercise, ranging from CrossFit, volleyball, running, to triathlon, to what we do here, just primarily general strength training. It's interesting how often people will ask me that question of, is this a bad exercise? Or you probably hate CrossFit. And I don't see why you'd want to demonize something that's super healthy in general for the idea that injury is going to happen. I just think injury is going to happen. So it's really difficult for me to say something's bad, but I'm down to hopefully rip apart these exercises.
I like this because you make money off of injuries.
I'm totally cool. Yeah. I mean, I thought it's funny. Right before we started, I said, I'm very comfortable people hurting themselves. It does not bother me if somebody makes a decision that it hurts themselves. I don't want them to go really far down and really, really hurt themselves. I don't want somebody to do something really bad, but
But that's 4 appointments for you.
But it's 4 appointments for me. It's money in the bank. So understand my
You might
bias.
upset at me because I haven't needed an appointment in like 2 months.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. If you could go back to some of the old episodes, I think you would see me hitting my head against the wall when we were talking
We
about
said
some
a
of your
whole
problems
segment on injury updates.
with Alex. It took a long time for you to change your mindset around the rehab standard. And I think once you connected that with some other support, and I think honestly that final elbow injury helped to push you into the right spot. And now I would say what I'm excited for you now is this is going to probably be one of the first times where you're entering into what I think is going to happen, which is a long stretch of being able to be physically active and actually focus purely on physical capacity for a period of time and build in the recovery so your body has good adjustments to it. I think you're going to be shocked at some of the gains you're going to get.
I'm still dealing with a little elbow flare up,
Shut your mouth.
but it's not. And
If you-
it worked. It worked. Just like he's silent. He's silent. He can't say anything.
Nothing negative here.
But yeah, so like we talked about in the intro, there are a lot of people. They've got their new stretchy pants. They've got their new Hokas. They've got a new gym membership. They're walking in, hopefully not blind, but maybe blind, and just
Going for it.
yeah, looking at their doom scrolling and seeing like, okay, well, it told me I shouldn't deadlift, I shouldn't do, upright rows, I shouldn't back squat, I shouldn't. Like, okay, well, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when you get to the gym?
Walk on a treadmill.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk on the treadmill, gonna hit the bike, not gonna actually hit any of my goals because those are pretty narrow-minded in terms of an exercise regimen. So I think we just want to kind of go through some of the top exercises that your Instagram influencers say you shouldn't do, and talk about maybe why you should do them or why you at least shouldn't avoid them, like you're avoiding exercise in 2026.
Love it.
All right, which one do you want to start with?
You pick it. I don't have it in front of me. So
Okay, the
Yeah.
upright row.
upright row. So the upright,
What an upright row is.
so upright row is you're standing completely tall. You have load that's like either a cable or a kettlebell. You can use
Or a barbell.
or a barbell.
Yeah.
And you basically are pulling up, elbows high, and you lift it up towards your chin, and you let the weight go back down. Now, the upright row, in my opinion, the reason it has such a bad reputation is it's literally a shoulder impingement test, and you're doing it with load. So, but I've seen a lot of people be able to do it successfully without symptoms. But it's because it puts your shoulder into an impingement position.
Okay. And from your physical therapist standpoint, do them, don't do them, avoid them?
Well, so if our clinic is empty, I'm saying do those a lot. No, so it is very specific to the person. If you're somebody who's mobile, you have great shoulder control, and the idea is that you really want to work on the deltoid, and you want to really fire that muscle up. You're definitely gonna feel it in those muscles. The unfortunate part is there's that impingement position is so intense, which you're gonna be in that impingement position. If that thumb is lower than your elbow in this position,
Yeah.
you're taking your humeral head, so the top bone in your arm, and you're jamming the humeral head against your acromion process. And your shoulder has what's called the rotator cuff, and there's 4 muscles that are there, and you're basically slamming the rotator cuff muscle group against the bone. You're pinching between 2 bones every single time that you do that. And just as a general rule, like if your hand's at your side, you have approximately a centimeter of space between the muscle and the bone. You get to about 50% of the way up, like right there, you've cut it in half. But once you get to 90, you're actually getting some level of compression at that point. What normally happens as you start to upwardly rotate and you start to go higher with your shoulder, the humerus and the rotator cuff, they activate by pulling on the humeral head, and they pull it down just a little bit so it keeps the center rotation right on the glenoid fossa. So if you're kind of thinking of it like that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, with that position, you're locking certain things in. You're not upwardly rotating your shoulder blade, so you're gonna smash the rotator muscles against bone.
Is that different than like a high clean pull, or is it the same
Well,
mechanics?
so it's a motion I would say was actually very similar. The big difference is when you're using power and force via forceful hip extension to drive the bar upwards, you shouldn't be pulling super hard with your arms and lifting that weight. It should be floating in some ways. Whereas with the upright row, it's a slow, controlled motion where you're firing the muscle the entire time. It's not a form where you're driving the weight up like with an Olympic lift. So when I think of that and how often individuals have shoulder injuries, if you hurt at all in your shoulder, it's a terrible exercise because you'll just make the shoulder pain worse, especially if it's a cuff injury.
Okay. And then I'll ask these same questions for all of them, but modifications or alternate exercises?
Okay. I always use the framework, and this is what we use here, which is regressions, lateralizations, and progressions. Regressions are taking the type of exercise and making it easier. Lateralization is doing something very similar, but shifting it in some way, so it's a really similar exercise. Progression will be making it harder, so you're making that activity more intense. Yeah. What I always think about with upright rows is somebody really wants to fire the deltoid, a face pull is a great one. So you're in this position, you pull the band towards your face, you're going to be getting very similar motion, but as you can see, it's not going to be in an impingement position to the same level as an upright row. Yeah. It'll feel really similar. You'll still get a good deltoid and external rotation exercise. I really like, if I'm looking to work on it, my favorite one for the shoulder is a suitcase carry, where it's at your side. There's no risk of impingement whatsoever. That'd be a full-on regression. I would not, this is not one that I would ever load super heavy and max it out. That almost seems to be a guarantee of blowing up your shoulder. Yeah. But once again, I'm comfortable if you want to try it. Not everybody's going to have a large impingement, and there's going to be anatomical differences between people, where there's some individuals where that acromion process, you can have three types. You can have one where it's completely flat, you can have one where it's slightly beaked, and you have some that are really beaked. And when it's like that, you have the muscles underneath it, and it's basically jabbing into the cuff muscles. Those individuals, they try to do this once, they're going to feel as if they're tearing their shoulder off, because they might actually be tearing a rotator cuff muscles. Yeah. But you might have some people with great shoulder control where the acromion process is completely flat, that this exercise feels actually quite good. You just have to be careful with it and actually analyze what your symptoms feel like. And if it feels terrible, that's a terrible exercise for you.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
I think the next one is probably in my opinion, the most avoided exercise, the deadlift.
The deadlift. That's unfortunate. Why do you think that is?
I think just low back problems. I think a lot of people probably are obviously not well trained in it. Their form is off. I mean, I know that I have to form check myself every time that I do it, just to make sure that I'm not putting myself in a bad position. But yeah, I feel like that is probably the most avoided exercise of all of them. That's opinion based.
I would actually agree with you.
Yeah.
This one is not I have a very strong opinion that this is one that everybody should do. This isn't one that I would avoid.
So the opposite, you want everybody doing that.
Everybody already does hinges. Yeah. It's basically a hinge activity. To me, the issue with deadlifts, it could be a form component. That I'm not disagreeing with that at all. What I find with deadlifts is that people will have a large gap. This would be a perfect example of a tissue capacity issue versus physical capacity issue. And when I say tissue capacity, it's what your tissues could actually handle without hurting. Physical capacity is what you can actually do. Most people who come in off the street, they could deadlift dramatically more weight than what their back is going to handle, which means it's a great exercise, but you have to do it to where you're focused on tissue development, improving your ability for those tissues to handle the load. You're not focusing on how much load you can lift.
I've heard people even think that it's a back exercise.
It is a back exercise.
I mean, it is, but it's primarily for the hamstrings.
No, I mean, so it is a great exercise across multiple structures, right?
Like a compound lift.
So it's hamstrings. It's you're going to get glute. You're going to get paraspinals.
Back.
Well, you're going to get a whole bunch of different things. Yeah, you're going to get lats. You're going to get a whole bunch of stuff, but you're going to get tremendous core work, right? So the way I always think of it, if you look at your core has to be, without getting too much into it, you have to control three separate planes. So you have to be able to control sagittal plane, which is flexion and extension, which when you're doing a deadlift, especially when it's a pure deadlift with a barbell or a trap bar, you're having a huge pull into flexion. And so when we say sagittal plane control, so the extension has to be super strong to prevent flexion. But at the same time, you have to dynamize the entire core. So the entire core has to fire really hard to basically prevent shear at the back. So when we're looking at the spine, you have vertebra, the stack on disc, the stack on vertebra. And if you don't engage the core well, you get shear along with crazy compressive disc load. And those things, the area that breaks down the easiest is going to be the spine.
Okay.
You have to it takes months to years to develop the connective tissue and bone changes so that your body actually handles it well. I think people just progress it too fast. And I would even say we were guilty of progressing people too fast because we didn't understand the concept well enough. It's been a growth area for our company and not even how we think about it, but your spine will remodel from the load that it's giving. My pushback on people who are avoiding it is you're just overloading it due to dramatically less weight. But you absolutely have to hinge because every single day of your life you're going to hinge, which is literally what a deadlift is.
Yeah.
So if you're completely avoiding it, to me, it's because you have a mismatch issue and your tissue capacity is dramatically lower. Or I would say the other thing that you just said, which is your form's crap.
Right. Okay. Lateralizations, progressions, regressions.
The easiest place to start is to learn how to hinge. We call it a waiter's bow or just a body weight hip hinge. Learning to hinge at the hips, not flex at the back.
And putting like a wooden dowel, or I've seen
that's a tool.
Yeah, I've seen people use like a broomstick.
Most individuals don't think about being able to hold their spine in the same place, right? So when you go into if you hinge at your hips and you lean forward, most often you're going to get a little bit of lumbar flexion. Training the ability to move just at your hips and not at your back, it's a key skill, and it helps to stabilize it and also not over-engage. What I find fascinating is there's individuals who have long-standing low back pain, and when we teach these exercises, the thing that's actually hurting them is they're over-engaging their core. They're squeezing their core too hard, and so they brace.
You'll see that.
Wow, I mean, it's kind of wild. It's actually really wild. So my brain always goes to learn that part first. Then we do a banded deadlift. Then we can transfer that to a kettlebell deadlift. We like it on both sides. Then we go trap bar. Then we go straight bar.
Yeah. I haven't done the banded one in a while. I forgot how much I enjoyed that one.
They work so well.
Yeah.
They work so well. The other big thing, though, is say you have an issue with controlling the force that's driving you into flexion, being able to engage without over firing or poorly firing your extensors. You can do stuff with like lat work that will help with it. You can do things such as banded pull through, where the band's between the legs, you're pulling up the
That's what I was thinking of.
And we have videos for all of these, so we can put each of those up. But your biggest issue is just picking the right starting point, and then the focus is actually on making sure it feels good. That's your definition initially. If you've had a bad event with a deadlift, it's the rehab standard. Make sure that your tissue actually has a good response and feel no pressure increasing the weight.
Yeah.
Gradually increase it as you tolerate it.
I've been sticking only like less than 150 pounds on that for the past probably 2 months just to really make sure that I'm not tearing myself up.
Because when if you go too heavy right now, so it can take a period of time for the tissue to go through a cycle and heal.
Yeah. Like I know I've got more in me, but it's just like that little inner me saying like, don't do it. Don't do it. You're going to blow yourself up.
Are you checking your key sign, flexion, extension of your back? Yeah. And it's been tolerating it well?
Yeah.
So that would be a way for you to progress. It would be check your key sign before and after, make sure there's no change.
Yeah. I just know like the next time I'll want to max out. And so I'm just like, I'll just keep it where
know it yourself. Keep the tiger in the cage.
Would a hamstring curl be a regression?
So that's an interesting one. It would get after an aspect of it, but it wouldn't get after
the
pattern.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be my favorite one. So say for example, I
just heard of people saying that like, oh, like I don't do deadlifts, but I do hamstring curls.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, do you know why they're picking the ham curl?
I think because it doesn't load the back.
Yeah. So you're literally avoiding the biggest issue.
Yeah.
That's never going to move them forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you kind of think about the idea of what you're trying to do with the activity is to get more comfortable doing the main movement. And I would say deadlift to me is one of the top 6 movements that you absolutely should be doing. ham curl is never going to move you forward. If anything, it's going to make your hamstring more dysfunctional because you're firing it in a position of eventual active insufficiency that does not mimic a deadlift at all.
Yeah.
There's no relationship to how the hamstring is operating with a ham curl to how it's operating in a deadlift.
Yeah. And I mean, we just highlighted 5 different lateralizations where you can basically get the same effects, but with a lot less stress on the body.
Yes. And I mean, that big part is if you don't feel comfortable, you probably aren't controlling extension at your spine.
Yeah.
And that's crazy trainable.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. I think kind of along those same lines, good mornings. I see a lot of people, I just added them to my regimen about a month ago. Same thing, super light load, but it's something that I've never trained before. And I feel like I'm having a good response from them, but similar movement pattern, different style of loading, but same thing, a hip hinge, good, bad.
Also, I think it can work really well. We don't emphasize a good morning here, but it's in principle very similar. I really enjoy using a loaded good morning if I'm trying to work on somebody's ability to control extension with hip flexion at their spine. Yeah. It's a really useful way to separate it. You can have sometimes when people do this, if when they do the activity, they feel their back muscles working too hard, as in they're not getting any activation in their anterior corridal, I will use different loading strategies, but that's one that you would want to have somebody do it with you if you have pain with it. I do think this is one that you can get an crazy amount of torque without realizing it with a very low load because the leverage is so far away from where rotation is happening. Mm-hmm. So I always think about that with a good morning. I get a little concerned just based off of how big the lever is. So if you think about the difference between a deadlift and a good morning, the leverage point is much closer to your center of mass with a deadlift, whereas when you do a loaded good morning where it's on your shoulder and you're going forward, that lever is
top. Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge. So you're thinking through the weight as it should be a relatively low weight. I also like to do banded good morning where the weight is in front of you, because as you get farther away, the resistance drops. And then as you get taller, the resistance increases.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy those ones because the leverage, as the leverage gets bigger, your load resistance with the band gets less.
Yeah, less vulnerable position.
So I enjoy those types of pieces. You absolutely should be able to do the whole motion with no symptoms. You shouldn't feel tightness in the hamstrings at the bottom. So sometimes with those I've had where individuals just heel lifting it takes away the symptoms with a good morning. And those are individuals who have pretty significant neural tension or neural mechanosensitivity. And that's a really common thing that people are complaining about. So what blows them up isn't actually the movement. It's that they're giving themselves recurrent neural tension tests, which hurt them.
They feel tight.
And they feel tight and they think that it's because their hamstrings got tight, and that's not actually what happened. They hurt the nerve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was just kind of a little offset, just similar to the deadlifts. The next one I see a lot of people avoiding are deep barbell squats.
Why is that?
I think same thing. It's a big load on the back. I think there's a comfortability issue to it. I know a lot of folks will get knee pain from squatting. But it's one of my favorite exercises, and I assume you'd say it's a part of those top 6, whether it's barbell or other variations of squats. Same thing. There's a bunch of regressions, lateralizations, and progressions that you can.
There's a ton of it.
Yeah.
And what do you say? So for you, for example, you actually can bottom out the squat and it feels completely comfortable. So when you say
and
deep,
I'm working towards bottoming out heavier loads.
Okay.
Like I think my current really good bottom out is probably 225. I can only do it for 2 or 3.
Okay.
But I'm looking to progress that. It also makes me nervous because so I don't always set up the safety racks at the right level.
Whoa.
And
okay.
so sometimes I'll just jump into it and start progressing, get to 225 and try and do a couple super deep, and next thing I know I'm just sitting there and I'm stuck.
Has that happened?
Only once, but that was a while ago.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
When you say deep squat, you mean all the way down, or do you say below parallel?
Probably below parallel.
Yeah.
That's usually what I consider a good squat is getting below parallel, although I do try to go ATG as often as I can.
And it feels good when you do that.
Yeah.
My biggest concern when somebody does full loaded knee flexion in that type of a position would be if they have any level of joint irritation, you lose the ability to fully flex a joint.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have seen repeatedly is people who do that heavy lift. It's not that every lift hurts them. It's that they'll do something that they don't even realize it hurt their knee joint. And I think that knee joint irritations happen all the time to everyone without realizing, because we put so much load through the joint. We don't realize, sometimes you'll notice your quads tighter on one side for no apparent reason. It's fascinating how often I'll do a brush and sweep test to look for joint swelling, and it's present in that person. We found that straight up with you.
On myself, yeah.
Now, when that happens, oftentimes you lose passive knee flexion, and that's the joint and the capsule and the synovial lining that is now irritated by joint flexion. Mm-hmm. And it's really irritated by end range joint flexion. So those individuals who are doing that activity, they will do something that irritates their joint, doing normal daily activity. We have it happen because we load the joint all the time. Then they go and they'll do an exercise like that, and they jam their joint worse, and it hurts really bad. So it's almost like you had a small little flame and you just put gas, like, fluid. I don't know, kerosene on it. Yeah, you blowtorched it, and now it's become a huge issue. Those would be issues where I'm most concerned with it. Individuals have meniscal tears in their history. The meniscus has to stay between these two huge joints, and it has to move. It's dynamic, and if it doesn't, you basically steamroll it. You crush the meniscus. You might tear it more. Those individuals who have issues where they keep on clipping it, those end range positions load the meniscus more. Right. It has these stresses, the architecture of the meniscus basically makes it so any end range position is going to load the meniscus more. So if you have meniscal pathology in your history, I'm not sure if that's
Yeah, and you don't need to go all the way down.
You don't, not to get to
tons of regressions available for the squat. Yeah. Do you want to go through your progression?
I mean, my favorite, which you have heard for, I
did it for a while.
I
did it for a while. I overloaded it. It was great. Same thing. Got stuck sitting down.
Sit to stands are by far my favorite thing for squats. The number of people that I think are getting exercise induced lower extremity dystonias, all that means is that they start to fire muscles weirdly. They're patterning things weird. They'll come in and they'll say that they do a body weight squat and they feel tighter. They have a hard time getting, or during.
Yeah.
Right? They feel better when they have greater loads. Like, there's all these things that are mismatches between what it should actually feel like. I really enjoy taking out the isometric phase, which is the phase where you're transitioning back up. That seems to solve a lot of people's problems where we force them to turn their muscles off and then go back up. That helps a lot to normalize the muscle pattern that we want to see, and then we'll reintroduce the squat. But sit to stands are by far my favorite. The way we do it is a little bit different. We actually have the person straddle the bench and sit down on the bench instead of aiming towards the bench where they're sitting down on it from the front. Do you understand what I mean?
No, you made me do this.
You
made me come to a whole session just to sit or straddling a bench.
Yeah.
And now I can squat regular again. Yeah. So I guess it worked.
I really enjoy those. I do like to change where you put the load. So whether it's a front squat, back squat, front rack position with kettlebells, there's almost an infinite way to change it. You can do it with
sandbag,
kettlebell, medicine
gauntlet squats.
Yeah, off-weighted on one side versus the other. There's so many different strategies for changing how you load it and put load through it. You can do heel lifts to basically change the leverage that you have at your lower extremity. They're all tools for these things that will actually allow you to do it. I would consider some of those regressions, a good portion are actually just lateralizations. You're still working out just as hard. And then for me, primarily a progression with those, it's increase the load.
Never squatted before. Like, what's your full-on progression? Are you starting with the sit to stand, going to a goblet squat, going body weight? Like,
if you're not hurting at all, I would assess what your squat looks like. So if somebody comes in and they can't get past, they do the quarter squat because that's all of a sudden their body locks up. The sit to stand is a place to go, because what's funny is everybody can sit into a chair. You really have people come in who can't sit down into a chair, but then you ask them to squat in free space and an open environment, and all of a sudden they lock up. That's a patterning issue. They actually have the capability. They just don't know how to do it. And if your body knows that, hey, we don't know if you're going to be able to stop and come back up, it'll just lock you up. I do think that's a motor pattern issue, right?
Okay.
So in those individuals, we really pattern the movement a lot. Sit to stands work really well for that. We get them to a point where they can do sit to stands at the full depth where they're getting parallel. And then from there, we start to give them challenges where they're coming out of it without using the bench. So then we go a little bit lower, and then have them try to do actually body weight squats. We'll load the sit to stands though. So I'd go sit to stands to loading sit to stands to body weight squats to loaded squats, and then we don't introduce the barbell till you've mastered it with a goblet squat and then with kettlebells, and then we look to barbell load it.
Love that.
Yeah.
Cool. The next one I want to talk about is one of my favorite exercises, and you've turned me off of it a little bit. I use it a little bit differently than traditionally, but the leg extension.
Yes.
I use it primarily for isometrics now. I have definitely laid off of doing just a traditional leg extension exercise, although after I broke my wrist, that was probably my favorite exercise.
Why'd you like it so much?
Because I could do it, number one.
That's a big one.
But I was able to like fill that thing up and just like max it out, which I think led to some injuries. That's a little bit of ego lifting. But after 9 months of only being able to do that machine, I probably should have been progressing and progressed pretty darn well on it. So yeah, and I just felt like it gave me a great quad pump. I do think it led to some of my adductor issues when I was overloading it there. But now I will load it and do kind of like a mid-range isometric with it where I hold it for 30 to 45 seconds per leg, do 2 or 3 sets of that. And that's been helping my knee pain quite a bit. I've read kind of some conflicting research that it's like the king for patellar issues, and also that it is just wrecking your patellar tendon all at the same time. I lean towards believing that it's helping my patellar tendon issues or just increasing the stiffness there so that it can load heavier and I can jump higher. But kind of want to hear your thoughts. Good exercise, bad exercise. And
once again, it depends. A good portion of the issues with a loaded leg extension, which is typically you're sitting,
mm-hmm.
you're sitting, your knees are bent to 9 degrees and you're straightening your legs out. Right. What I see, so there's a couple things just from a philosophical standpoint where people place the leg extension. I would say it's very similar to a bicep curl. Right. And kind of how my brain thinks about it. And so people will put it as a primary exercise when it's clearly at the most an accessory exercise. That would be my first thought.
I agree with that.
To go into just patellar tendon loading, tendons don't really care the movement associated. It's the way that you produce tension or if you get compression. So if you're producing tension through a tendon and it's not overloading it, you're totally fine, right? So the way you look through, there's a continuum when we think about tendon health. You have where you get a reactive tendinopathy to tendon disrepair to a degenerated tendon. That continuum, you want to make sure that you never get to where the tendon is getting to like a degenerated tendinopathy. Those are very difficult to heal and really difficult to get around. But when you have like a reactive tendinopathy or a tendon that's in disrepair where the architecture needs load to help your body actually heal it and reorganize it, a controlled exercise like that's totally fine. There's no issue with it to me at all. That's why I enjoy the isometric component. Yeah. To me, the big issue with the leg extension movement itself is it's an open chain exercise. So it's not typical to a low way that you do, which is called a closed chain where your foot's on the ground. Your knee joint is actually going to architecturally or biomechanically operate differently in those two environments, right? The first issue is your patellofemoral joint, so which is different than the tibiofemoral joint. So if we look at your knee joint, you can see there's actually 3 joints that are really close to each other. You have a patellofemoral joint, that's your patella, your kneecap on top of the femur. You have the tibiofemoral joint, which is the femur fitting on the tibia. That's the main joint that most of us are talking about. And then right below that, you have the proximal tib-fib joint, which is your tibia and your fibula hitting on each other. So those 3 joints, you can have different issues at those joints. My biggest concern with this one is the compressive forces that happen with the leg extension for the patellofemoral joint. And it's really for people who have developed patellofemoral arthritis or injury to that joint, which is just a common injury. And so I look for individuals who are getting grinding or popping or catching. I really don't like that exercise. I really don't think it's that much. I don't think it's that useful as a strength builder. I'd much rather just let somebody load squats. If I want to fatigue them, I would much prefer to do some level of a straight leg raise exercise, for example, and say like the squats, when they're doing the squats, they're not feeling it in their quads at all. They're feeling it more, say somebody, like we were talking about, somebody has a back issue and they can't load the squat enough to actually get after the quad. I totally like you can totally do like a leg extension and superset that with it to get more exercise on the quad right before you do, or get more exercise on and pre-fatigue the quad so that you get a better exercise impetus or stimulus from the squat. I am totally down with that. But what I often find happens is first, they use it as a primary exercise, which I think is a mistake. Second, people will have a patellofemoral joint issue and they make it worse, not realizing that last 0 to 30 degrees where you're fully extending your knee is a gigantic patellar joint load. They'll mistake what they're doing there and they'll grind on it. But if you're doing it for tendinopathy and you're doing it isometrically, I think it's a totally fine exercise.
Yeah. I think I see a lot in social media where, it's listed as a primary exercise, or it's like, don't do this at all.
Yeah, which I think as long as you understand it, and then if say it's starting to bother you, we can always use a rehab standard and make it so it's symptom free. But if you have meniscal pathology, we run issues with that because especially if
you're putting a ton of load on the meniscus.
Yeah, especially when you get to full extension. So you have an anterior horn lesion, you'll basically smash it over and over again, and you'll do it in a open chain position, which I find to be extremely provocative for meniscal tears. So it can be I really do not like the exercise if the joint at all is swollen. If somebody's starting to recurrently get joint swelling in their knee, I do not like the exercise at all. I found it to be extremely provocative clinically. But I wouldn't say that there's strong research that shows that you're overloading the tibiofemoral joint, because I don't think you are. I just don't think it's that useful of an exercise in most cases.
Yeah. Like I said, I love it for ISOs, and I feel like it has helped me a lot there, and avoiding the actual movement itself has helped out some of my inner quad, inner thigh problems that I was dealing with.
Well, actually, I think that's an important point. So I can have an opinion on that, but I do think like when you test it, the way you just said it, when you test it the way that you have and you're seeing benefit, I think that's actually a very strong reason to continue doing it. It's more just monitor for some of the bad things that can happen with it.
Yeah. And like every once in a while, I'll pump out a couple of reps at, an isometric load, which is not going to overload any of my leg muscles, and I feel fine with it. But yeah, that's an interesting one that I think gets glamorized and also like devilized at the same time.
I know it is interesting. I wonder why. Yeah. Most of if
you're a bodybuilder,
don't care.
You need those. But
if you're somebody who struggles with tight quads or feeling that your muscles are super tight in your quads, I think it's a horrible exercise. You're basically hyper loading it and in a active insufficient position. So it's not one of my favorites. So that's a way to think about it. But if you're not having that as an issue, that it doesn't bother me whatsoever. But if you're somebody where, man, it seems like my glute turns off all the time and it feels like my quad is always super tight, you're probably feeding into a mechanism that's driving the quad tightness. You're not making it better.
Okay, last one, overhead presses. Same thing. I see a lot of social media stuff like, no, you're going to break your neck. You're going to rip your shoulders off.
Rip your shoulders off. I would actually say it's the one that PT team and coaching staff have noted as the most common one to hurt people would be shoulder press.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, which is fascinating because you wouldn't have thought of it. Sarah's actually the one to put that together, if I remember right. The pattern that we were catching was in people who have neck injuries, disc injuries, we were seeing that the shoulder press would spike their pain over and over again, and we narrowed it down to the overhead shoulder press. One of the things that happens when you're doing a shoulder press is you don't realize your system to basically stabilize your shoulder has a tight integration to your cervical stability. So you have these muscles in the front of your neck, your longus capitis and longus coli, I believe, and they activate to basically stabilize your neck. You'll hear people sometimes say shoulder packing, or not shoulder packing, neck packing, where they'll flex their neck slightly to engage those muscles. And even if you do it just kind of like this, you'll feel these muscles in the front of your neck fire. Mm-hmm. What happens is individuals won't stabilize their cervical spine well when they're doing the shoulder press, and your body still has to hold the head up, and people they'll get first rib dysfunction. So they'll feel something here and it'll feel really tight, or they'll lose cervical motion, or the next morning they wake up and they can't move their head. So we were catching a whole bunch of cervical pathologies that were developing very specifically from shoulder presses. What we found that works is just if you work on the cervical stability, and you make sure that the person who, if they are predisposed to a cervical instability, you can use a neck collar, which is always funny to make people wear a neck collar. Works beautifully. We also would use tools such as tests for muscle inhibitions, tricep, for example. If you have a disc injury in your neck, it can shut off your ability to fire your tricep. Probably one of the most common things we see from CrossFit people when they come in. They'll be like, I've started to notice I can't shoulder press anymore. I'm really struggling with my thrusters, and they have no tricep anymore. They can't fire it at all. And we catch that they have a neck issue and they didn't even realize their neck wasn't hurting, which is just fascinating that you can actually irritate it to that level. But shoulder press really does load your neck more than what you realize, just because you have to stabilize your cervical column, which is going to predispose, or it's going to give more load to your neck in a way that you don't think. So that's number one. Number two is shoulder impingement, which I think is more probably what you've read.
I mean, yeah, just that, yeah. And I've heard both. I've heard not specifically impingement, but shoulder pain and neck pain.
So that's a similar thing. Would be anytime that you have if you have a shoulder instability, or if you have an active injury, that's a huge difference. If it's an activity that currently hurts, yeah, that makes total sense. And if you have an inability to get full shoulder flexion, okay. But if you don't have those issues, a shoulder press to me is totally fine. But if you have an issue, if you have a shoulder impingement, when you get to end range, you are absolutely going to be compressing the cuff, and most individuals will have a painful arc that they go to. So they start to get here, and now it starts to hurt, and then they get a little bit higher, and now it kind of goes away. So if you want to work on shoulder pressing, you can basically work above and below that painful arc, and you're totally fine, because the issue is actually the impingement that's happening dynamically during the lift.
There's your regression.
So you can do the isometric above and below. It's very similar to what you just said with leg extension.
Yeah.
Right. If you had a range that hurt you, you could just do the range that's completely pain-free. We also find that if you take somebody out of gravity completely, the response on the neck and on the shoulder is a lot easier. So you can actually shoulder press using a band laying on your back.
Oh, I thought you were going to send them up into space.
Yeah, take them completely out of gravity. So, and then hold them upside down. Right, just joking. Yeah. If that makes your shoulder pain-free, you're not stabilizing well against gravity when you're producing the movement. And that's just another way to take it out that has nothing to do with the movement itself. It's just your way that your body's patterning around it.
Yeah. So another good regression. And then I assume you could move on towards dumbbells, and then eventually barbell would be the progression.
My next progression would be incline, like an incline press, so that you're once again, you're fully supported. And then I would go upright, and you can do upright where you're doing it dumbbell, but as soon as you go barbell, you're locking your hands in place, which once again is going to give you less degrees of freedom. So you're not going to be able to maneuver around any level of pain. But then there's we always catch some compensation. If your shoulder hurts, one of the most common ones that I see is people have infraspinatus or external rotation weakness. And so as they're pressing up, you see their arm shift out to the side as they start to go up. That means you don't have enough external rotation strength to be able to basically keep it in the same place and do the press. And when that happens, you see how you're going into an impingement position. And so you have individuals who will make compensations that eventually becomes locked in, and they hurt themselves over and over again. So it'll feel more dangerous than what it actually is.
I've been hitting my internal and external rotations now for about 2 months and progressing nicely.
Feeling good?
Yeah.
I would actually say one of the other things that we see a lot is individuals will be taught to pack their shoulder. Your shoulder blade has to upwardly rotate to be able to produce full motion. And so they'll come in and have got cues to like pin their shoulder blades down when they're pressing. Don't do that. You need to get 1/3 of the motion for shoulder flexion comes from your shoulder blade rotating upwards. And if you're not getting that, you're going to impinge. You're basically just going to bash your shoulder, and eventually you'll hurt yourself. So it should feel like you're getting shoulder upward rotation.
I think if you take anything from this podcast, it's that if it hurts, don't do it, at least for the short term. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it hurts, do something different. Yeah. Any other exercises that a lot of people are doing potentially in the new year that are worth highlighting?
Those I think are good ones. I think
those are the ones that I see villainized the most.
Yeah, I would like to go back through and say that if you want to lift and you want to be comfortable in the gym, there's 6 basic movements.
We have a whole episode on it.
But lower extremity press, lower extremity pull, upper extremity press, upper extremity pull, core, and split leg. If you hit those exercises, and if those are things that you're looking to do, if you're looking to get into a lifting routine, check out that episode. We go into it into quite a bit of depth. That's where I would start. Oftentimes when you're first starting, if you're using machines, that's totally fine. That's a great place to start. But if you want to own the movements, those are the 6 that basically, to me, undergird all lifting.
Yeah. And most of those you can do a body weight variation or a banded variation.
All of it.
Same thing, very low risk. I know we've put some videos out on those before. So definitely check those out. I'd say if your body is popping like you're stepping on packing peanuts every time you're doing an exercise, you should probably just, reassess. Maybe come over to smithperformancecenter.com.
Packing peanuts.
Have you ever stepped on those? Or maybe even the packing bubbles?
I have stepped on those.
Yeah. When I get out of a deep squat every once in a while, snap, crackle, pop. Cheerios. No, that's not Cheerios. That's some other cereal.
It's Rice Krispies.
Yeah, Rice Krispie treats. There you go. I like those. Those are good. Not going to eat those this year. Anyway, if you want to stay strong, confident, and moving for life, stick with the Past Your Prime podcast. Like I said, check out smithperformancecenter.com if you want to maybe do a nice little fitness assessment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got some one-on-one training with some fantastic trainers there. Otherwise, you can check us out, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. We have pastyourprime.com that hasn't been updated in a while, but eventually it will. We'll add some more resources there. And look out for some cool PYP gear to come out here in the new year.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think I'll enjoy that. I'll be wearing the same shirt every day, 7 days a week.
Why not?
Yeah.
That's not going to negatively impact your life.
That's a positive impact. But I've got a picture of me on the shirt that says, hit this QR code to go to my website.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are going to love that.
Not sleazy at all. Yeah. No slinging it.
Cheap marketing.
Good Lord.
All righty. We'll see you guys on the next one.
PYP, baby.
Peace.